I think what we've seen revealed in the past few days that whilst energy companies like British Gas are assuring us they're doing everything they can to make contact with households with vulnerable tenants in them, that they're not doing enough. And what we've seen is a spike in the number of prepayment meters being installed and forced installations as well. And it is really shocking what we have read about and seen in videos like you've just shown, because people are protected from forced installations. If there are young children, if there are vulnerabilities in that household, these installations should not have been happening. And whilst it's disgraceful how the subcontractors have operated and how they've spoken about these people, fundamentally it's the energy company, and in this case British Gas, that puts the application in for a warrant to the court for this to happen. I'm afraid to say, I don't think this is isolated. I think probably we've got more examples of this across the energy company industry.
Actually, Caroline, it's quite prevalent in other energy companies as well. It's just British Gas have been caught out. So the owner of British Gas, Centrica, they have apologised. They're going to be looking to have an investigation into this and maybe be look at changing how they operate when it comes to prepayment installation meters. But do you think that's enough? What more would you want energy firms like British Gas to do?
I don't think it's enough. I don't think it's enough. And I think I accept that he has apologised. But I think in the interview he undertook, there was quite a lot being pushed back onto these subcontractors. The subcontractors are actually incentivised in terms of these forced installations. They get a certain amount for calling to a home, and then they get an extra amount for actually breaking in and installing these meters. And as I said, fundamentally, the companies are meant to undertake due diligence to make sure they're in line with the regulations that are set by Ofgem, and it does appear that they have undoubtedly failed. So I think it's absolutely right that Ofgem has asked them to suspend all of the energy companies, these installations, but it was something that we also advised government last year, as did others, that what should be happening during this terrible crisis we're facing, with everybody facing increasing bills, but particularly for the fuel poor, that energy company behaviour should not make it harder for people to keep their homes warm. And I think there is a reasonable ask, and Citizens Advice have said this, have a bigger debate now as to whether forced installations should end and we should find other ways to engage with these families.
Caroline, I just want to read out some of the messages we've got from our viewers since we've been on air. This is Julie from Surrey. It's disgusting what energy companies and debt collectors are doing. Take the money from their huge profits. But John from Bishop Stortford says the customers that can't pay their bills are liable to pay their bills one way or another. We, the bill-paying majority, should not have to foot the cost. And I'll just give you one more. This is Carol from Plymouth. There should be a social tariff or an amount added to utility accounts for the vulnerable regarding fuel. No one should be expected to freeze. What are your thoughts on any of those comments?
Well, firstly on debt, and the companies, the energy companies would argue that obviously they can't write off debt, and I'm not suggesting they write off debt. But to be honest, the government have paid out a huge amount of money to support consumers that actually has also protected these energy companies who are at the risk of bad debt. On top of that, only before Christmas, we know that for people on prepayment meters, whether they've been forcibly installed or they've asked for them in their homes or they've just inherited them, there's been a massive challenge to get the vouchers to them because they can't get the payments that probably we've all had through our direct debits in terms of the £400 that have come from the government to every household. So I think it's only 2/3 of those vouchers have been redeemed by some of the poorest people in the country. And to the point of your other viewer, I think there is the appetite now to explore what better pricing we should see in energy companies in the future. And also within the mix of all that is a social tariff that recognises some of those people who are the most low paid in our country. Fundamentally, for me as chair of the Committee on Fuel Poverty, it's about making sure that those in fuel poverty or those vulnerable because they have disabilities or other conditions that mean they have to have more energy to keep warm, that we make sure we have a pricing system that they can afford. And importantly in all this, that their homes are made as energy efficient as possible. Because again, these people we're talking about, these households, these families, they're often living in the least efficient homes. So for every pound they put in those meters, a lot of it is just going out of the roofs, the walls, the doors, and the windows, because they're just not efficient enough to keep them warm.
All right, Caroline Flint, thank you very much. I'm sure it's a subject we'll return to in the future.